So this is Figma Basics, and first I wanted to tell you why Figma. So first of all, the biggest advantage of Figma is that it's free, and you can go even right now create your own free account in Figma, and it's free for one user and up to 3 projects. And it may seem like 3 projects is not enough for for most of your if you're doing, especially if you're doing professional work. But I can show you some tricks how you can use Figma with just 3 projects. And this is my Figma account, and all those items here in the left sidebar, those are the projects. So if you click on a project, then you can have unlimited number of files in a project. And you can see that's my personal website, and I have my website, my social media, my portfolio, blog posts, graphics, everything is here in this project. And so if you're using free Figma account, you can have active projects and archived projects. And in active projects, you could have as many client projects as you want. So basically you can use it forever for free. Of course, it's gonna get messy and having all those files in free accounts. So I would recommend, if you are doing this professionally, it's not expensive. You can upgrade to Pro. I think it's only $12 per month, which is like nothing comparing to how much you can make by using Figma in your work. So these are the files, and in each file, this is the file now I opened, and each file you can have unlimited number of pages. So that goes down in this hierarchy. So you can have now pages, and I will talk about artboards in a moment. I will show you that in each page you can have unlimited number of artboards. So that goes in many ways. You could use Figma free account for a very long time. Second thing, it works both on Mac and Windows, and it actually even works in the browser. So you can use it on any platform, any system that has any of the modern browsers like Google Chrome or Firefox. Third thing is easy to use, share and collaborate. Everything in Figma lives on the cloud. So everything you are doing right now, any move, any step is automatically saved on the cloud, and you can have access to all of your design files, even if you are not on your own computer. You can go to figma.com, log in, and you can have access to all of your design files, which is very useful. I think it can help in many cases. The last thing, it can be used to design not only websites, but also apps, graphics, banners, visual content. So almost anything you need, any design you need can be created in Figma. I use Figma right now to design even logos. I create brand guidelines in Figma. So when I go to one of my projects, my client projects, you can see I have like my working file, and inside this working file, it's loading. So I have like wireframes, visual brand, website guide, web page mockups. Everything lives in one file. I just have everything organized by pages. If I have a logo design, then I will have some logo design here. I even created a podcast cover, social media graphics for this client. I created social media. Those are the featured post images. So everything is in one file. And the way I use it, I can show you because I think this is interesting. So if you have different projects, the way I use it, I have my working file. This is where I work, and I have a preview file. This is where and this is the file I share with the client. I never share my working file. I don't want the client to look over my shoulder and see what I'm doing, of course. So once I'm ready to give the client an update, then I copy a mockup, I create a presentation, and I paste it to the preview file. And then I share it with the client. We can do a Zoom call and go over the file and explain all the steps. Okay, going back here. So yeah, so that's all about why Figma. I think I don't need to convince anyone. What else you need to know to switch to Figma? If you know, and it's not all about the software. If you feel more comfortable with the Adobe XD and or Sketch, don't switch to Figma just because it's trendy, it's something new, and everyone's switching. Use the software you feel most comfortable with. And to me, the most important part is the speed. If I can use the software and I can be fast in using it, that's where I'm going. And speed and the way I don't even need to master the software, like know all the little features, all the little things in the software. I want to learn to use the software so I can be as fast as I can. And that's the most important to me. So then I can create more concepts, I can create more projects for clients. So whatever software you choose, I recommend to learn just the basics and learn all the shortcuts, learn all those little tricks that will help you become very fast in using it. All right. Now let's move on to, this is like the first lesson I'm going to talk about. It's the artboards. So what is an artboard? So artboard is like a file, is like a canvas inside your page. So every artboard, you can see different sizes here. Every artboard has its own size. You can create your own artboard by using this tool at the top, and you can create an artboard any size you want, or you can use this settings in the right sidebar and specify the size of your artboard. So for example, if this is a desktop mockup like this one, I set always 1400 is the most common Windows size, around 15 inches. MacBook Pro has this Windows size. So and I can show, I included here some different artboards, different file sizes. So if you are designing image for Instagram, you can have 1080 by 1080 image, Instagram portrait, Twitter and Facebook, Apple Podcast is 3000 by 3000, is pretty big. So you can create any image you want and specify the size and have it all in pages as artboards. Now, the very interesting thing about the artboards is that all the items that live inside the artboard have some constraints set. So like, let's see, this square here has left and top. This square has top and right. This one has right and bottom. So if you want to resize now the artboard, you can see that all of these elements will stick to the edge that was set to. And this is, you don't need to know all about the constraints. There's not that many cases where you even need to resize the artboard. Like in case of designing websites, I only resize it, I only make it taller or shorter. But I saw many people using Figma were very confused about this, because when they had some elements inside the artboard and when they started resizing in top and bottom, in this case all of those are set to left and top by default, but if it was set to the bottom and they start resizing the artboard, it will start following the size of this artboard, which can be confusing. Your entire design can stretch and it may not look great. So if you want to resize the artboards and skip the constraints, all you have to do is hold Command, and now we can resize the artboard without worrying about the constraints. And that's what I usually use when I make my web page mockup taller. Always hold Command, make it taller or shorter. So like in this case, you can see now with constraints, and now holding Command without constraints. I believe in Windows that would be Control instead of Command. So so that's about artboards. Now, when you have elements inside the artboards, the artboards work like mask. So when you move the element to the top, you can see it's hiding, it's cropped by the artboard, so you can't see it outside the artboard, so, which can be great to create backgrounds. If you have some, full width backgrounds, images, you can make them bigger than the artboard, and they will be cropped on the sides, so you can see them. And if you want to make them visible, you can click on the artboard, and here's a little checkbox, clip content. Once you check it, it will make everything visible outside the artboard, which I never even used this setting here. Now, interesting thing is, so let's say you have your design created, and this is your Instagram image, your promo banner for Instagram, and now you want to save it, export it, and save it as PNG or JPEG, so you can use it on Instagram. All you have to do is click on the artboard here on the name, and in the right sidebar, you can see export. So when you click export, there's a little plus icon here. It shows you to which file you want to save it to, export it to. And so now this is by default 1x, which is going to be the same size as specified here, 1080 by 1080. And once you click export Instagram, it will save you to your hard drive the file, and you can change the name here. And if you want to create, let's say this is your logo file, and you want to have multiple different files inside, different versions of the logo, different kinds of files. So all you have to do is click plus icon again, and now I can save it again as 1x. I'll remove the suffix, and I can save it as JPEG. You can choose SVG, PDF, and now let's say I want to create a bigger version. 2x is for Retina displays, so I'm going to keep 2x. It will add 2x suffix to the name of the file, and I will keep PNG. Now when you click export, it will export, it will save all 3 files of this artboard. Sorry guys. So now let's, so now another interesting thing, these export settings actually work for any element. So if you have an image file or logo file inside your artboard and you want to export only this single item, you can add export setting here too. And same settings like for artboards. Now let's say you want to export another file and use the same settings like for this artboard. You can actually, by clicking here in the white space, you can actually select your export settings. Now I click Command C to copy. Now I can click on this artboard and press Command V to paste it. So now I have all the export settings copied from this artboard to this artboard. And this is it can save you a lot of time. It's a huge time saver. And you can do the same, on files, on single layers, just paste your export settings. Okay, I think that's all about the artboards I had to say. Do you guys have any questions? I'm gonna wait for some questions about the artboards. I think this is the basic thing, and by reading your comments, someone missed how to create an artboard. You just use frame tool here and you just click it and drag it, and now you can create any artboard size you want. Another interesting thing, you can actually create artboards inside artboards, but then it's not called artboard, it's called frame. So when you click the frame tool, you can create it inside this artboard. So now you have a frame inside, and it works the same way like artboards. So I can add an element inside this frame, and now when I move it, it will crop it on all the sides. I can add a little background here so you can see it better. So this is my frame. When I click it, everything moves that is inside this frame. And now when I click the layer inside it, it's cropped. It works like a mask. And same for artboards. You can click on the artboard, you can move everything that is inside this artboard will move together. Yes, you can also use a shortcut F to use frames. That's what I usually use. I use all the shortcuts. I even had to find where I can create, how I can create artboards using these tools, because I always use shortcuts. I never even use those this toolbar here. So, and I would recommend to you guys as well, learn all the shortcuts you can. Can you create, someone has a question, can you create a set of custom export settings like in Sketch? I'm not sure exactly how that works in Sketch, custom export settings. Like preset of export settings. What I usually do, I usually just copy my export settings from one artboard to another. I have some templates already created for like logo files. So like I have a template for logo frame, and then I copy the logo inside this frame, and I have all the export settings already set for that frame. All right, I will move on to, I'm checking the chat. If there are any more questions about the artboards. There's a question if I use browser-based app or native app. I use native app for a couple of reasons. One, when I'm in my focus mode, I like to close the browser, any distractions, so I have only Figma open. Another thing is when you have a desktop app installed, you can also install, you can find it on figma.com. There's like font helper, I think, app that will give you access from your Figma desktop app to all of your fonts that you have installed on your desktop, and also all of the Adobe fonts. So when you use the browser-based app, you only have access to Google fonts, I believe. So I recommend using a desktop app. Also, there's a confusing thing about when you have it in the browser and you want to move left to right, sometimes the browser actually go back or next instead of moving inside the app. I don't like this experience. Someone asking about Figma versus Sketch. I was working in Sketch for over a year. I still have some projects in Sketch, so I sometimes have to go back. I just find Figma much easier to learn, I think, and it's much more accessible to other people. So that's why I'm choosing Figma. Also, a big part of my personal brand is teaching design, so I want be able to reach as many people as I can. All right, I'm going to move on because I have a lot of other stuff to talk about, and we don't have too much time. Maybe if I don't cover everything that is here, maybe we'll do a second part sometime next week or so, if you will be still interested in listening to me. All right, shapes. So now I will show you some of the basic shapes you can create in Figma. Shapes are located here in the top bar again. So this is the square, line, arrow, ellipse, polygon. So I will go over every single shape. So when you hold Shift and click and drag, now you can create a perfect square. Without holding Shift, and you can create a rectangle, any shape you want. And it's the same rule for any other shape here. Lines, you can create a line. By holding Shift, it will make those lines straight. Arrows, same thing. circles. Also, this is ellipse, and with holding shift, you can actually create a perfect circle. We have triangle, star, and so these are some of the basic shapes. And it seems like not too many of the shapes, but you can actually create so much with just those basic shapes. And I design all of my logos using just this tool here. So now I will show you a couple of things. When you have a square, you see those little white squares on the corners. You can click on any of them. You can resize your shape. You have two arrows on the corner like this. You can rotate your shape. By holding shift, you can rotate it. That will snap it to the closest radius. Now when you click on it, you can see those little circles here. Those are the radius. So you can change the radius of the square by clicking and dragging it. You can make rounded corners very easily. Now, if you hold Option and click on a circle, you can round only one corner, which is very nice. You can create some interesting designs by doing this, using only one corner. Lines, those are very simple. I would go back to lines because when we talk about fill and strokes, I can show you more. Same thing about the circles. That's a very interesting thing. Maybe we look better on the perfect circle here. So when you click on this circle here, you can create that looks like a pie chart. And it's very useful, especially for in any UI kind of design, or if you're doing some infographics, they want to show some stats. This is where it starts. This is where it ends. Also, you can drag this item, and we'll create like a hole inside your pie chart, which can be used even to design icons or logos. This could be like, I don't know, a C logo icon here. Now, triangle, same radius. You can change the radius. Here you can change the number of corners. So you can, by holding and dragging, you can create different shapes out of this triangle. Star, same thing. There's radius. You can change the ratio here, so you can make the star sharper or more rounded. You can change the number of arms. So this could be already your icon, like settings icon or something, and you can create a circle inside, and that could be already your icon here. So as you can see, just by having those basic shapes, you can create some very interesting designs, any icon you want. Now I will show you how you can modify shapes. So this is the shape, and as you can see, you can only resize it. If you want to modify the single points, you have to double click on the shape. And now I'm going into editing mode, focus mode. So now I have circles on the corners, and you can click and drag it, and you can modify the shape by points. Now, if you move your mouse between here on the line, you can see a little circle. You can click on it, and it will add another point, which is super simple comparing to like Adobe Illustrator. It's very intuitive. You can just quickly add as many points as you want. You can create any shapes, and this works on any shape. If I double click on this one, I can also modify the points. Now, combining shapes. This is very interesting. So let's say I have these two rectangles, and I want to combine them. This is like my, I don't know, this could be my design, and I want them to be locked in as one shape. So I can select both of those layers And here at the top are some of the selection options. So you have, if you ever used Illustrator or Photoshop or Sketch, you probably know these. So this like union will make them together, or you can subtract. So one of the shapes is subtract from the other. And even though this is like one shape now, you can still, by going here into layers and opening up the arrow, you can still edit individual elements here. So I can see this is my element that is subtract, and I can move it, and I can edit it from here as well. I never use exclude or intersect, so but those you can assume what they do here. Another interesting thing is flatten selection. So if you are sure that your the shape you created is good, you want to you don't want to have those options anymore to edit individual elements. You can click on the main layer, and now we can either press Command E or click here, flatten selection, and now it removes all those items. So now it becomes one shape here. Fills and strokes. So now that I have my shape, I want to add some fill, change the color. Fill is the color inside the shape, and stroke is obviously the stroke around the shape. So here's the fill in the right sidebar. You can click, if you want to change the color, you click on this little square here, and now you have a color picker, so you can choose any color you want. From here, you can change opacity of the color here. You can use also a color picker and pick the color from your design. A shortcut for color picker is using Control-C. So now if you have this rectangle selected and you want to quickly pick up a color from another element, you can press Control-C and just pick the color from anywhere you want, and it will automatically apply to fill. Strokes are here, so if you want to add a stroke, you need to press the plus icon, and now I have a stroke. I would change the color so you can see the stroke. Let me zoom in. It's very thin, 1 pixel line around the shape. I can change the size, and now this interesting thing, if you hold Option in any of those settings, if you see a number, you can quickly change the number by holding Option, and you can see these 2 arrows, and now I can drag left and right and quickly change the amount here, and it works on any number in Figma in those settings. So if I want to change the opacity of this fill, I can also click here, change the opacity, quickly reduce it. And you can add multiple fills and strokes. So let's say this is my fill. I'm gonna make it light red. Now I want to add another fill. So I again click the plus icon, and automatically it adds like a gradient here. And you can change that by going here. Here's a solid color, different kind of gradients. So let's say I want to have a white gradient on top of this. So I can set it here, and now I have a gradient which is only white color, and now we want to change the color behind it. I can modify this setting here, and that's how I make it blue. And you can see the white gradient remains on top of it, and you can change to any gradient behind it without worrying about your gradient. And you can also change the order of these items. So I can click here, drag it, drop it. Now the fill is on top of the gradient, so you can really see it. If I add another solid color, red, as you can see now, red color covered the blue. If I move it here, now I have a blue layer with opacity on top of red, which creates a nice color effect. And same like with export settings, you can click on any of those fills, you can select multiple of them. You can press Command C, copy them, and apply it to a different shape. Now I'm pressing Command V, and now any shape can quickly have the same properties like this shape. And it works same for strokes. I believe you can only copy the color. Let me see. Yeah, you can only copy the color. You can't copy the stroke width. But I never even needed to use it. So what else we have? Copying shape properties. I just covered this. Rounded corners and shadows. So I already covered rounded corners. One interesting thing about rounded corners I want to show you, and I use it a lot. If you have two shapes and you combine them like together like this, I'll make unit selection. So now I have two shapes, and now I can set a rounded corner on the entire on this entire thing. So here's the rounded corners setting in the right sidebar, because now, as you can see, I don't have those circles like in the basic shapes. So again, holding Option, I can change the rounded corner. And now it made all the corners, all those connections rounded here. So you can still edit individual elements. If I move them, you can see how rounded corners adapt based on how those two shapes are connected, which is very cool. You can create some nice looking icons this way. And last thing, shadows. I know shadows are very popular right now, so I'm going to show you how you can create a very simple shadows. So shadows live here in the right sidebar under Effects. So again, plus icon. Now by default you already have drop shadow. You can click on this little sun icon, and now I have my shadow settings here. I can change the blur of the shadow. Again, holding Option, I'm moving the blur. I can change its position, top and bottom, left and right. Here we can change the opacity of the shadow, so you can make it darker or lighter. Here you can change the color of the shadow. That's pretty much all you need to know about shadows. There are different types of shadows here as well. You can have inner shadow, which is going to be like inside the shape. And it's not, maybe I would change here so you can see it better. So these are the effects inside the shape. And there are some layer blur and background blur. I never even use those, but you can explore how they work. And again, you can copy the shadow. If you're happy with your effect, the shadow style, you can click here, copy it, apply it to a different layer. All right. I know a lot of those things you can learn from Figma YouTube videos, but I'm trying to show you also some tricks and some of those more advanced things. And Figma is actually a very advanced design tool. And what I'm showing you right now is just some basics, and maybe I will record a second video where we cover more advanced stuff, because there are so many different tricks to speed up your work, to make your work more efficient, that I'd love to share with you guys and show you. All right, let's see some questions. Do you have some questions about the shapes? How do you make proportions of shapes responsive with constraints? So, all right, this is super interesting thing. It's a little bit more advanced, but so I'm going to create a new artboard. Now I'm going to add my rectangle here, and let's say this is my page. This is my I don't know, some sort of background here, and I want to make it responsive. So when I change the width of the artboard, I want this image to be responsive as well. So you can use constraints on this layer, and this works on everything, on text layers, on images. So you can use these constraints settings here, as you can see, you have left and top. So now it's stick to the top and left edge of this image, of this artboard. So when I resize it this way, you can see it follows the left top corner. If I change it to right and bottom, now when I resize the artboard, it will follow right and bottom corner. But you can also hold Shift and click select the left side. So now we have both left and right. And now when I resize the artboard, it will resize the rectangle too. So now it follows bottom, left, and right. I can again click top, holding Shift, I can click top as well. And now it will follow all the ways, resize both in all directions. So it's very interesting, super useful thing if you're creating some different sizes of your designs and want to quickly resize them. The last thing is those two lines inside. When you click them, you can position the element always to be in the middle of this artboard. So now when I resize it, it will keep the size and will always be centered. So constraints work only on artboards and frames. So if you have a frame inside the artboard, and now I add this element inside this frame, you can also add here a fill so you can see it. So now I can set constraints on this element. Let's say that we're going to left and right, and to keep it in the center. So now it will be relative only to this frame. So I can resize the frame and the element inside will be relative to it. So follow constraints. Now I can click on the frame. I can again set the constraints of the frame too. Now the frame will be relative to this artboard, and elements inside will be relative to the frames. What else? I'm gonna check the chat if you have any more questions. Can you turn off constraints? Tara asks, and by the way, hi Tara. So yes, you can turn off the constraints. If you want to turn off the constraints, I told this in the beginning, you can hold Command, and now I can resize this artboard without constraints. I don't even know if this works on frames. Let me check. Yeah, it works on frames too, inside these artboards. Can you do those constraints with a whole component? Again, this is more advanced stuff. I can talk more about this, but yes, you can. When you create a component, and yeah, I think I would try to maybe cover this in layers and components in a moment. But when we create components, it behaves like a frame, like the artboard. So you can set constraints inside the artboards. All right, I will move on to the next lesson type. 1 second. So type, of course, you can't design without type tool. To create a type text, you use this tool here or press T. And again, like with shapes, you can click, drag it, and create your text box. Now I can type in any text I want here. Then I press Escape to save it. Now we have a text box layer. You can click, drag it, move it around the page. Sorry. If you want to change the properties of the text, again, you go to the right-hand sidebar Here you have text properties. The first thing, I'll make this is the font size. So I'll make this bigger, again, holding Option, dragging, making the text bigger. Here we can change the font. Regular, bold, light, those are different font weights. You can select different font styles. Here is the line height, so you can change the height between the lines of text. So if you have multiple lines, add it here. Now, when you select auto, it will just automatically apply some line height, but you can choose any line height you want. So, and I usually use percentage for it, so it's easy to convert to in CSS. So if I use 150%, in CSS that will be 1.5. And again, you can hold Option and change the line height pretty easily. You can also set it in pixels, so I can set it to 50, for example. Now this is the paragraph spacing. So if I have two paragraphs like this, I'm just placed an empty line here between those two texts. I'll make it a bit more line height. So if you see, this is the line height, and now this is the paragraph spacing. It will have, so you can add more space between the paragraphs. Text alignment, you can center, left align, center align, right aligned. Here's the vertical alignment. So inside this text box, you can choose how your text should be aligned. So now is aligned to the top edge of this text box. So I can change it to middle. Now is in the middle of the text box. So if you resize the text box, the text will remain in the middle of the box. I can also change it to the bottom margin. So now you can resize the text box and it will remain on the bottom. There are also different ways how your text box should behave. So right now you have a fixed text box size that your text lives in. But if you want to make it just any size, so you can change here to outer width, and now your text will just stretch as long, as your line is. So if I start typing in more text here, the text box will just expand. If you change the width of the text box, it will automatically switch to auto height. So now the text box, if you start typing more text, it will always remain the same. The width will be the same, but it will expand vertically. So now the text will just go down and down. There are some more advanced text settings here when you click those three dots, but I think we can cover this another time. I don't think you will need that too often. Maybe the decorations, so you can have underlines for links, you can have strike through, you can change letter case to uppercase, lowercase. Now you want to change the text color, same thing like with shapes. You have the fill settings here, so you can click on the little square, change the color of your text. You can change opacity. You can also add a stroke to your text. I never use it. I don't think you will ever need it. You can add effects like shadows. So all those things work the same way. No matter what layer you have selected, it will all work the same way. Do you have any questions about the text, the type tool? Someone's asking if I use Figma to create illustrations. Some of those vector illustrations I create in Figma, but hand-drawn illustrations I I make in Adobe Illustrator. Yes, you can export. Someone asking if I can export CSS code. So when you select the type tool, you can go here to code, and here's your CSS code for this text. So it says the font family, font style, font weight, size, line height. So all the things are here. Let me see if I change to 150%. So yeah, you can see 150% here as well. And this code tab is very interesting because if I go back to shapes, I can click on any shape and go to code, and we'll give you all the CSS code for all the shapes. All right, no more. I don't think anyone has more questions about the type tool. It's already 2 p.m., but we started a little bit later, so I will move on to images, which is very, very important, I think. And there is a lot of confusion about using images in Figma when I saw beginners using it. So let's move on to images. Images are actually very easy in Figma. It just can be a little bit confusing how to use it, but I can show you a couple of tricks here. If you want to add an image to Figma, there are a few different ways. You can do this here by using place image, and to be honest, I never use it this way. When you click place image, you can then choose the image from your computer, and it will upload here. But the way I usually add images, I usually either drag them from my computer, from the Finder to Figma, and we automatically place the image. Or if you go to the browser, let's go to, you want to use this image in Figma, you can always click right click on the image, copy image, and then paste it inside the image artboard. So now you have image in Figma this way, and it works the same way like a shape. So by holding this, you can resize it, and when I hold shift, it will keep the proportions. So by holding shift, you can keep the proportions of the frame. Now you have the image in the frame here. You can add rounded corners. Now if you want to crop the image, and let's say you want to make it because if you do this, it works fine, but you don't have full control over how the image is positioned. It was always in the middle. So you can double click on the image. I'll go to design tab here. Oops. So you can double click on the image and it shows the image settings. You can also go do the same by clicking here on the image in the fill. And here you can, by selecting this little drop down, go from fill to crop. And now you have a different view here. So now we can click on the image, move it around, and you can see there's a little opacity here. So it means this portion of the image will be outside the box. So this works like a mask. So the image will be inside this mask, and I can also resize it. So if I want to more focus on the face, I can resize the image this way. And now by pressing escape, I return to this view. And you can also, by going here into the settings, you also have some basic image additions. So you can change exposure of the image, you can change the contrast, you can change saturation. So if you want to have a black and white photo, you want to modify saturation to 0. Temperature, highlights, shadows. So all the settings you can use here. Here you can also rotate the image. I never even use this setting. What else you have? You have fit, so it will reset the image to fit to the frame. You have tiles, so you can have multiple images inside. I also never use this setting, but I guess it could be useful to create some patterns. And now, very interesting thing about images. So let's say I'm going to change that to fill. So now, let's say in my design, I have like shapes that, and those are like placeholders for my images. And now I want to add image to each one of those boxes. So if you click on a layer with the image, and here you can click on the fill, select it, press Command C to copy it, and now I can paste the image to any other shape I want. So even if you have, let me resize it, my circle, I can paste the image here. I can paste my image here. So this is very interesting. Now, if we want to add like overlay on a photo, it works the same like shape. So you can press, click here, the plus icon, you can add another layer of the fill with the fill. So this could be my gradient, or this could be a solid color. I can choose black, change opacity, and now I have like overlay on the image. So I can now add my text on top of this. Change text. So this could be already that could look like a quote graphic for your Instagram. Super easy to create. Again, you can click on this image, change the saturation if you want, change exposure. You can add more fills. If you want to add a gradient on top of it, I'm gonna click here, change to black. Change to black this as well, to 0 opacity. So now it goes from black to transparent. I can change this gradient to go from the bottom, and maybe I can now hide this overlay. So now we can have some text at the bottom that was always black and wouldn't interact with the, if the photo is too wide or too light, then the text will be still visible. Okay, do you have any questions about the images? How do you decide whether to export an artboard frame slice for a set of icons, for example? So if I have a set of icons, I can put them all inside the artboard. I can call it icons, and then you can create frame for each one of these icons. And the reason why I'm doing this inside frames, so you can set the frame a specific size, let's say 100 by 100, and then you can place any icon inside those frames, and then when you export those frames, then every of your icon will have 100 by 100 pixels size. So which can be very useful, especially for web developers, so they don't have to change the size of the icons to match each icon size. You know, every image will have 100 by 100. And having, you know, frames inside the artboard is very useful. So you can like click on the artboard, move all those, you know, things together instead of like selecting the icons and moving them if you need to move. Can you use this to create tiled repeating background? Yes, you can. If you don't have a repeating tile background, you can use it here, tile. and then resize to match your size. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I still was going to talk about layers and components and sharing your work. Those are a little bit more advanced topics, and you can explore some of those on your own. You know, there are many other tricks and tips I could give you about Figma. I could probably talk for a couple more hours here. So I think let's say I will try to cover some of those in the part 2 of this tutorial, of this workshop. So for now, you can go through artboards, shapes, type, and images. You can explore all of those on your own, play with those settings. You can copy this file to your own Figma by going here and selecting duplicate, or exporting the file, then uploading to your Figma. So just play with those, try to create some simple designs. Use those, you can use those empty artboards as your templates for your own files. So you can try to create, I don't know, your own Instagram quote, use the image, place some text on top of it, change the font, change the color, play with it, see how it works. One more thing about exporting that I think I didn't mention. So if you want to export the image, and this is like 1x, 2x, you can change the size, but you can also choose a specific size of your export file. So like, let's say you want to save this file as 500 by 500. You can type in here 500W, which means this should have 500 it should be the 500 pixels wide, and it will automatically match the height size of this image, and you can export this way. Choose any file sizes you want. All right, if you guys have any more questions, can you show how to get file again? Okay, so when you open the file in your browser, you need to be logged into Figma. So first go ahead to figma.com, create your own free account. Then use the link I shared with you, this Figma link, open in the browser, then click on this arrow here in the top bar and click duplicate. And it will automatically copy the file to your drafts. So then when you go to Figma, you go to drafts, you should have your draft here in your file here in drafts. Do you backup files somehow? Yes, I do backup files, especially those the active projects. And when I finish a project, then I archive, I export the file, save it on my Dropbox just in case. I trust everything that lives in Figma on the Figma cloud is safe too. I trust they make some backups too of those files. So it's probably even safer to have everything in Figma on the cloud than on your own computer. John, I will send you the link, or you can find it in the email I sent, or I will share the link. I will share the link in the email after this workshop. So I'll send you a link to this replay so you can watch the video again, and then you can open this file in Figma. How do I export the file? Again, you can click this arrow here and click export, and that will save you the file with file.fig format. So if you want to add a file, if you want to add it back to Figma, you can go here, click import icon here in the top right corner, and then choose the fig file to edit. You can also drag it from your, that's what I usually do. I go to my Figma account and I just drag the file from my hard drive here to the empty space and it will automatically import the file. Version control option. Version control option, so you can, let me see. So on any file you have, you can go to show version history, and it shows you all the changes you've made throughout since the beginning of this file. So I can go back to the to this when we started, and you can see all those changes are reversed here in the file. If you want to go back to that version, you have to click here and restore this version, and that will replace your current version with this one. And a tip for Instagram carousel. I can show you guys, I'm going over time. If you want to stick with me a couple more minutes, you can, or you can watch it again later. I can show you what I'm doing for my own carousels. So I have a social media file. And these are the templates I have. So I have like carousel template. These are all of these are separate artboards, and you can see I have the size 1080. This is the portrait, Instagram size, and all I have here is text. So it's just using the type tool, and I have some different backgrounds. So then when I create my a new carousel, I can just click on this artboard here, and by holding Option, you can duplicate it. So I choose this one, then I can choose this one, let's say this one, and then I just replace text with my own. Then to save it, I can select all the artboards, all these artboards, export PNG, export all 3 layers, and export them, save them, then upload to Instagram. That's pretty much all I have for carousels. I have some quote templates, and as you can see, I have my templates here that I start with. I have some post ideas, not too many ideas I have here. I have some posts I'm working on. So like even this Figma workshop, I created here in Figma, the Instagram size, the Twitter and Facebook size of this image. So all of this live in Figma. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today, spending some time. I'm going to send you now an email with all the links, and hopefully I will find some time next week or maybe next 2 weeks to do the second part. And if you have any specific topics and anything specific you'd like me to cover in the next video, please send me an email. Let me know what you'd like to learn, and we can cover that next time. All right, thank you guys.